Who are the richest Australians in each state? I'm Matt. Welcome to Matt's Money Matters and some lighter content today. We're looking at the entrepreneurs, the heirs, the great Australian success stories from across the country. And the data is compiled using numbers from the AFR's Rich List, October 2020. To give you some context before we begin, total Australian wealth is about $10 trillion. Now, that's not GDP, that's wealth that's accumulated over decades. It includes properties and businesses, shares, bank account balances. The two richest Aussies are both West Australians, and they made their money from iron ore. Australia exports about $100 billion of iron ore every year, most of it to China. Number one, Gina Rinehart. Gina Rinehart's from WA. She's worth $28.9 billion, and that's through her Hancock prospecting business, which owns a big portion of the Roy Hill iron ore mine. Now, Gina's dad, Lang Hancock, was rich, but Gina took it next level by developing that mine, inking a phenomenal deal to get it off the ground. And since then, she's invested back into developing more diverse industries like dairy and pastoral stations. Second to Gina, another West Australian who's just worth noting, Andrew Forrest, worth $23 billion. And that's mostly from his shares in Fortescue. That's another iron ore miner, the third biggest in the country. Now, remember, the value of his shares of the company represents his ownership of the assets, the iron ore that's underground, the port, the intellectual property, the mining equipment, the rail line. He owns a portion of those things because the company owns those things and he owns a portion of the company. So when we say he's worth $23 billion, it isn't just cash. Now, the other thing about Andrew Forrest is he has quite literally donated billions to charitable causes through his Minderoo Foundation. One recent example was going out of his way to help solve the crisis in Australia during the pandemic. But he is from one of WA's most famously successful families, and one of his forefathers was, in fact, the Premier of WA. Outside WA, Victoria. Anthony Pratt, worth $19.8 billion. He inherited packaging and recycling business Visy Industries. It was created by his granddad, Leon, and then run by his father, Richard. They both left Germany in 1938 to flee to Victoria. Anthony, though, he inherited the business, but he chipped in his own work too. He led the US operations for some time, and while he was there, Pratt Industries grew from the 46th largest corrugated box producer in the US to be, apparently, the 5th largest. So Anthony Pratt contributed big time to that business. Now, it's interesting to stop here for a moment. These first three people all came from reasonably successful families. Gina Rinehart and Anthony Pratt in particular from real business families that were very, very successful before the children were even born. But that's not the case for everybody on this list. There's some great self-made stories too. We'll get to some of those momentarily. New South Wales' richest, Mike Cannon-Brookes, founder or co-founder of Atlassian, a tech company. He's worth about $17 billion. Now, this is a pretty self-made fortune, but he was apparently the son of a global banking executive, so a pretty good boost early in life. But you know what? Full credit to him and his business partner, because apparently they funded the startup in the early 2000s, borrowing $10,000 on their credit card. Next on the list from New South Wales, Harry Triguboff, $14.4 billion, founder of Meriton, which builds apartment buildings, and it's said that he is a pretty self-made guy. Here's one name you'll know, Queensland. Clive Palmer, $19.2 billion, former senator. Now, this is a fascinating story. He started in real estate and founded mining companies. And allegedly, he used to pull all sorts of legal maneuvers over mining tenements, which WA got a taste of recently. There's some great history around Clive Palmer, and we're not going to share it all now, but my word is he well known as a businessman in Australia, and he's good at getting some attention. The next one I want to chalk up to the Northern Territory. It's Hui Wing Mao, or Zhu Rong Mao, a little-known billionaire property investor. He's worth $18 billion. Now, I want to give this to the Northern Territory because apparently this guy lived in Darwin in his early life, and he is an Aussie citizen, although I understand now he's in Hong Kong. And he made his money, he made a little bit investing property in Darwin, but the big bucks were in China when it grew. In South Australia, the richest family are the Shahins. Worth $1.6 billion, they own the Peregrine Corporation. That includes the Bend Motorsport Park, On the Run petrol stations, and Krispy Kreme in South Australia. In 1984, Fred Shahin bought a BP service station in Woodville Park in South Australia, and now Peregrine is the largest private company in the state. Now that is rapid growth over 36 years. $2 billion revenue annually, apparently, and 3,500 employees. Massive. From Tasmania, a very interesting story, Dale Elphinstone, who owns a mining services business, Elphinstone. He's worth $1.1 billion. Now, this one is one of the ones where you can clearly chart how he built his career. He started working at age 15 in the 1960s, apparently as an apprentice dealing Caterpillar equipment. Caterpillar, of course, being used in mine sites. They do the excavators and all the rest of it. In 1975, he started modifying equipment for underground mining in his dad's back shed. And then he designed and manufactured a couple of his own dump truck models, which is quite cool, and sold those to companies. So there's a very clear story as to how he built that business. And maybe one that somebody else can replicate if you're watching the video and you feel inspired, because, gee, some of these people have really great stories, don't they? Terry Snow is the richest person in Canberra, or the ACT, worth $3.2 billion. His big deal was buying a 99-year lease of Canberra Airport from the federal government in 1998, and he also redeveloped the Brindabella Business Park and redeveloped the terminal there at the airport. So, wow. I mean, some of these people have come from nothing, some of these people have come from very successful families, but all of them have contributed something to society and created jobs and built value and built wealth. And that's something we should all be grateful for. I find it inspiring hearing some of these stories, particularly that guy from Tasmania, Dale Elphinstone, starting out working basically in a shed, fixing equipment, and now he's a billionaire. And of course, remember, when we say someone's a billionaire, most of that value is not cash in the bank, it's the value of the assets they own, the warehouse, the equipment, whatever else. Check out Matt's Money Matters on Facebook. I'm about to start a page there, and I can tell you we're going to have very regular content, which is going to be worth looking at, much more regular than on YouTube. Please subscribe to this channel if you've enjoyed, and join us again anytime you like.